and welcome to Vision into Reality, a special program on the Belt and Road Initiative, jointly presented to you by China Global Television Network, CGTN, and the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation, KBC. I'm Tian Wei from CGTN, and welcome O'Brien to Beijing.
It's so amazing to be here. Thank you so very much, Wen. And I am O'Brien Kimani from Kenya Broadcasting Corporation. Can I tell you things, Wen? Before the standard gauge railway line, which is a project of the BRI, it used to take about 12 hours to get to Mombasa or from Mombasa to Nairobi. But with the SGR, it takes about 6 hours.
Wow.
I'm inviting you one of these fine days to come and join me as we ride on the SGR.
And as you may know, Belt and Road Initiative is not just about the hardware, the infrastructure, but also about the software in a way. It is a platform to enhance cooperation and understanding among countries and cultures. And that is exactly why we have invited O'Brien. Our friends from different parts of the world, every one of them has stories to tell and insights to share.
Absolutely. But before we get there, let's first of all have a look at this clip.
Now gaining momentum and posting milestones. Covering over 70 countries, connecting 2/3 of the world's population, contributing to over 1/3 of global GDP. Over the past 5 years, over 120 countries have signed up for the Belt and Road Initiative. Greater connectivity has spurred wider diversity along the ancient Silk Road, traversing different civilizations. From Asia to Europe, on to Africa and the Mediterranean, the reach is vast. The modern Belt and Road grows amid challenges of globalization. It's an effort to step up and be counted as part of the solution, to take the journey of 1,000 miles, starting with a single step.
共建“一带一路”倡议不是地缘政治工具，而是务实合作平台；不是对外援助计划，而是共商共建共享的联动发展倡议。
So that's exactly what BRI stands for. We got to know better, but certainly we got to know more through our panelists today.
Oh, absolutely. And it's time now to introduce our guests to the team.
We're very honored to be joined by 6 of them. Tirera Surakhata, the General Manager of Yiwu Crestone Trading, coming from Senegal.
Thank you.
On this side, we have Mr. David Mann. He's the Executive Chairman of Mann China Investment, and he is from New Zealand. It's good to have you, sir, on the side.
Thank you.
Welcome. Zhang Wei, Executive Director, Vice Chairman of the Board, and Managing Director of Costco Shipping Ports Limited from China. Good to see you.
And of course, on my side here, we have Professor Peter Kagwanja. He is the President and Chief Executive Officer of Africa Policy Institute. Prof, it's good to have you on the set too.
Thank you, O'Brien.
From Kenya, too.
Oh, absolutely.
On my immediate left side, we have Matthew Scarpa, who is the Director of Italy Trade Agency in China. Good to see you, sir.
Grazie. Thank
Gracias.
Gracias, I like that. And last but not least, we have Mr. Winston Ma. He's the CEO of the China Silk Road Investment and Development. It's good to have you, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome.
Good to see you, Winston. Tirera, I understand you're from Senegal, in China for quite some time, have a pair of Chinese parents.
Yeah.
But the question is, how are all these beautiful things related to the Belt and Road Initiative?
Yeah, it's like 16 years ago when I came for the first time to China. I came by Guangzhou and I heard about one city called Yiwu. So I decided to go and see and know what this city can offer to me. But let me tell you, when I arrived there, I was really fascinated by the opportunity and facilitation made for foreigners there. So I decided to try to open a business there. But as every beginning, things was very hard at the beginning, very difficult at the beginning. But I have friends, Chinese there, who also was ready to help me. One of them introduced me his family, his father and mother, and they took me as like a family member.
That's the Chinese family?
Exactly. And I
You
decided
have adopted or they have adopted you?
they have adopted me. They have adopted me. So I also think about, as their age is really high, 17 years old, I think that the best gift I can give them back is to bring them back to my country, to know also my family. 2013, the EU city government decided to make what they call EU Foreign Mediation Department. So through to this foreign mediation, I can say that my whole country knows me about this work I'm doing here. And my country president decided to appointed me as advisor for the Chinese investor to my country. So this is a wonderful thing that I have made in China here. I would be very happy to share it with you guys today.
Right. Have you ever thought about it when you first came to China? You will become the advisor for the president about China.
I never think about it. But when I arrive at EU, I believe that it's possible. Because, you know, it's a city that is full of opportunity, full of facilitation. So depend on yourself. I feel that depend on me. I have to do I have to work on what I can get in the future. In my country, people even used to tell me that you are Chinese lawyer. I said, no, I have a wonderful life and wonderful experience in this country. So I'm proud to talk about it also.
Very good. And when he told me that in Yiwu, there is a huge population of Africans who have come from Africa and they are doing business with China.
Exactly. You know, if you really want to see a successful example for African people living in China, you have to go to Yiwu and see it.
Very good.
Yeah.
Time now to shift gears and now go to the beautiful island nation of New Zealand. Mr. David Mann, tell me this, how do you connect the dots between New Zealand and BRI?
Well, I think BRI deals with everybody that trades with China. And New Zealand signed a free trade agreement with China many years ago. We were the first developed country, so-called developed country, to do so. And as a result, we didn't really have a recession in the great global crisis. New Zealand was trading increasingly with China. It's 28% of our exports now. And so we have a very strong relationship. Although more recently it's come under threat. We're getting huge pressure, particularly from the United States, to resist Chinese investment. And this centers around the company Huawei, who've bid to build a 5G system in New Zealand. So I was back just some weeks ago in New Zealand and very involved in the public debate, which most New Zealand businesses are very much supportive of allowing Huawei to continue its position in New Zealand and to build 5G. But unfortunately, our security services announced that they were going to block Huawei, that it was not to be trusted. But fortunately, our Prime Minister's qualified that position, which resulted in an invitation by Xi Jinping to visit Beijing, which he did only just a week ago. And it looks as though we're back on track because as a small country, we need to be non-allied, maybe even non-aligned. And New Zealand doesn't have a military treaty with anyone else. We didn't go to the Iraq War. We always follow our own path. So for me, the relationship with China is an expression of that.
Very good. Tell me this. I mean, how then would you say your relationship with China under the BRI has been a win-win kind of a platform?
Well, I think as I identified, our trade with China has kept us away from the worst effects of the global financial crisis. And going forward, New Zealand is a small population, it's 5 million people. New Zealand doesn't have a lot of financial resources, so we always have dependent on outside investment. China has plentiful financial resources and increasingly is investing in our agriculture and agricultural processing. This creates jobs, it pays taxes. So it's fundamental to us that we have a continuing relationship with China. And the BRI gives us a context. You know, the BRI can be anything you need it to be, whatever your country's needs are, how you can have a direct relationship with Chinese commercial interests. It is a very flexible system. So rather than see it as some do, that it's some form of neo-colonialism, some sort of leverage trying to capture countries, particularly small countries, we, I think, in New Zealand generally see it as a huge opportunity.
New Zealand is well known for so-called independent foreign policy that you have been taking pride through various administrations. But I know that even David, when you were speaking out some weeks ago, when the debate was still big in your country, you even receive some hate mails from some who do not necessarily understand the situation. Tell me about that.
Well, like all countries, that we have our own extremists, and we currently have a coalition government, and one of those parties, the New Zealand First Party, which expresses what its aims are, putting New Zealand first, and essentially it's putting white New Zealanders first, which is ironic because a large portion of our population is not white. In fact, the original people, the Maori people, make up 15% of our population. I think 40% of Aucklanders were not born in New Zealand. So there are some people who feel that the changes taking place are a real threat. So they see someone like myself as being a danger to their way of life. Whereas I think our ability to be a multicultural country, and one that has by and large taken China to its heart, with a long relationship with China. Even back in the 50s and 60s, our Communist Party was linked to Beijing, whereas most Western countries are linked to Moscow. So there is a long history. And yeah, there are some who would like things to be different, but already New Zealand is changing. So you just ignore those things and you carry on trying to speak as objectively as possible.
So when you are talking to the media there, you just ignore whatever they try to threaten you about.
Well, you do, yes.
All right, I guess that's a great advice. That's quite a story, David, you told over there. But we also have someone coming from Italy. How are you doing?
Molto bene, thank you. Very good.
I want to learn Italian.
It is a
Not
Very
only-
good.
fashion, actually.
Not only the language itself, but also,
Grazie.
you know, the designs,
Yeah.
the furnitures, and also
The cuisine.
Exactly, exactly. So what have you brought to us today? Stories, delicacies.
Well, I try to turn from vision to reality.
Okay, we love that.
So it's true that, of course, during the Belt and Road Initiative, the total trade between Italy and China improved 13%, which is a vision of free trade and fair trade. But just to be very personal, if I may, you know that your president was visiting an island, a fantastic island of Italy, which is Sicily.
Of course.
And in Sicily, we do have some very special fruits due to its microclimatic situation. And just yesterday arrived the first flight of fresh Sicilian orange.
Oh,
Okay.
So this is a gentleman who does his job very well, I guess. You brought all the samples with you all the time?
You don't believe it?
Yeah.
And look,
Oh,
I
my
have
God,
also
that's
said Italy is
that's
the
very
first wine
tempting.
producer in the world.
All right.
So, you see.
We got the flag over there too.
But it's interesting because when Mr. Xi Jinping was there in Sicily and in Italy, Italy and China signed an agreement and an MOU through which it was possible to increase the cooperation, even the export of fresh orange juice in this case, or wine.
So it's possible now because we can cut short the distance and the traveling time of fresh produce, and they could arrive in China fresh, which is very important.
Yeah. And this is one of the, let's say, win-win situation. Why? Because from one side, of course, the Italians and the Italian companies needs to get this market too, no? To stay on the global market. On the other side, this orange or this wine are very famous in the world because, for example, the orange are the only orange that have the double vitamin C. The double content of vitamin C is the unique one due to the microclimate of the island that Mr. Xi visited.
My mom used to say, get your vitamins every day. I guess now I have one more place to get it from the Italian orange. I'm doing advertisement for you
It's
right
yours.
now.
May I? It's yours.
There we go.
where is mine?
The wine later.
Wine.
Oh, the wine.
later,
All right, I'm
yes.
getting the wine.
Yes,
Just
later.
keep it there for me.
But beside the oranges and the wines, there are a lot of issues that people are looking at when it comes to the Belt and Road Initiative. Peter, I want to go to you about that.
Yes.
You are coming from Kenya,
Yes.
and you were telling me before we get into the room, you were taking that train.
Yes.
The train my colleague O'Brien mentioned exactly.
Yes, it was, I think, in June 2017 when I was one of the few Kenyans who were fortunate to have the first ride, the inaugural ride of the railway from Mombasa to Nairobi. A very comfortable ride. It takes you through this huge game park called Savo Game Reserve. Interestingly, the railway is about 20 feet above the ground because it goes through the park so that the tallest giraffe can get under.
Wow.
That's very interesting. And then you can see far from the railway. And therefore, it's not just a ride. It's a very comfortable, entertaining ride. It's also interesting that you're trying to reconcile development and environment so that you don't have to stop development because you are destroying the environment. At the same time, you don't need to destroy environment because you are bringing development. You merge the two. So we arrive in Nairobi. It's the first in 100 years since we had the first railway completed in 1900. The interesting thing is that it takes 4 hours. Previously, we used to take 12 to 14 hours from Mombasa to Nairobi. Tourism is expanding. You start to see industries emerging around the railway. You begin to see people having shops and businesses around the railway. And our cement industry, for example, has expanded greatly. We are very happy about it. And myself and my Chinese colleagues, particularly in the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, are studying this phenomenon and how it is transforming. Last week, the president of Uganda visited Kenya and took the same train as we did. And as Kenyans, we watched. His dream is to have the railway go through Uganda, and then our major dream is to see it go to the Atlantic. And for the first time, we can move goods from the Indian Ocean to the Atlantic coast. And therefore, we can go to Tirera's country in Senegal by railway. It's an African dream, thanks to BRI.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
And he forgot to tell you about the thousands of jobs that have been created as a result of.
You know, one question I have for you is whether people could afford the tickets.
Oh,
I mean, you got the high-speed train. It must be very expensive. Will common people in your country be able to afford the ticket? I mean, it's a developing country.
Listen to this. Listen to this. 3.9 metric tons of goods have been ferried along the railway, decongesting the roads and making tickets on the bus service cheaper. 2.5 million Kenyans have used the railway. I wanted to visit my family in May. I can't get a ticket because it's overbooked. So we're making about 4 to 5 billion Kenya shillings by tickets alone. It's wonderful. This is one a project we think is not only having a multiplier effect on our economy, but it's likely to pay for itself.
Now, O'Brien, I'm already worried. If we do the special report on that train, are we going to get the tickets?
You have to book 3 months in advance.
Okay, you guys do it, okay?
And our focus to Mr. Zhang Wei. Tell me, please, how does Costco, tie up in all these BRI issues?
As you may already know, Costco Shipping Group is one of the biggest integrated shipping group in the world. And we are among the first group of Chinese companies that go overseas. So many problems that Chinese enterprises encounters right now were the problems of ours as well decades ago. So I think our lessons and our experience can tell the Chinese companies what to do and what kind of challenges they may face. I want to share with you about one story about Paris container port, which we made investment about 10 years ago. It was very challenging. In the 9 years ago, when we took over the 100% stake of the company had only 700,000 TEU annual volume, which was not enough to ensure a sustainable financial return. And more critically, when we took over the facility, the labor force just left because they believed that we're going to send thousands of Chinese workers to take over their jobs. And the local politicians went over to the TV shows claiming that this entire acquisition was a total conspiracy. And somebody even wrote down a big slogan saying, Chinese go home in the front of our gateway. You may ask what kind of solutions were, what we have to do to deal with this problem. But I can tell you, we barely did nothing. What we did is we just focused on a total supply chain solution with the strategy of investing in the port as the foundation, setting up ocean service loop as the link, and establishing comprehensive logistic services as the extension. We successfully developed this port into the biggest transshipment hub in the Mediterranean. As you just mentioned, the total volume right now increased by threefold to over 5 million. And the local jobs right now increased to 13,000 right now, directly and indirectly. And guess how many Chinese employees we sent over there?
How many?
5.
Just 5.
Just 5.
The 5 of them?
Yes.
Or
No. That's
foreign
our
there?
that's our Greek employees and Chinese employees.
Yes.
Chinese employees.
One could tell Mr. Zhang is very taking the pride of this project. But as we all know, that China is on the learning curve while doing this Belt and Road Initiative. We also have a lot to share and learn from many of our partners from around the world, be it from developing or developed economies. Thank you so much, sir. Well, it's not just the stories here, O'Brien, that we are hearing, but also from the leaders around the world that they have been expressing their best wishes and also their aspirations for the Belt and Road Initiative. Let's take a look.
One Belt, One Road for us is really a very important project which we strongly support, and also we contributed to creation the missing part of it.
Abbiamo tenuto come governo.
We have decided to join the BRI as a government because Italy, due to its geographical location, is the natural terminal of the BRI.
I believe it has huge potential for a win-win situation for all who are involved, and that is why we are very keen as a country, and I believe also as a continent, to partner strongly with China in this initiative.
The presidency's global initiatives like the Belt and Road is something that is going to benefit the entire world.
The increase of the Chinese role in international cooperation is a very important tool for the development cooperation to be more and more supportive of the developing countries.
The Belt and Road Initiative is, in my view, a very positive proposal by China. And it is positive from a growth perspective.
World leaders sending their best wishes and aspirations for the BRI and why it matters to all of us.
Definitely. From President of the Republic of Kenya to Managing Director of the International Monetary Fund, Christian Lagarde, all of them voicing their support for BRI project.
But you know, there's still a lot of challenges and questions unanswered. Meanwhile, people have suspicions about what is the end goal of the Belt and Road Initiative. So it wouldn't be fair if we do not handle them now.
It's absolutely right.
One of them is about debt trap.
For lots of the new economy projects, they are not necessarily long-dated debt-financed projects. Instead, these projects are invested by investment funds, internet companies, together with local partners in a very, let's say, nimble format.
So it's not just government to government, right?
Yes.
And it's rather having a lot of third parties involved, more market economy forces in the way.
Very much so. Very much so.
Interesting. Peter, what about for you?
70% of Chinese money is going to infrastructure, basically to open up the continent for other opportunities. If that is a debt you are incurring, you are not just incurring a debt, but you are investing for future generations, because the road is going to be used for centuries, perhaps thousands of years. That's one. The second thing is that I think the whole idea of debt trap is a myth. It's a myth that is not very helpful to Africa. Why? Chinese debt comprises only 20% of Africa's total debt. 35% is to IMF and other international agencies. 32% is to other private donors from the West. So China is only 20%. So the BRI should invest more in Africa. It's not about scaring Africa that this is a debt trap, this is a debt trap. If it's really a debt trap, Africa is already trapped in the debt by the Western organizations. We are already trapped. I hope the Chinese can buy off much of that debt as a cheaper cost so that Africa is released of the debt. So that is China has a responsibility to release the Africans from the debt trap.
interest.
By basically buying
Great
out
point,
the debt.
I think.
Yeah.
Great point.
So essentially, you're looking at the Belt and Road project as a debt refinancing on the positive side.
Yes, you refinance the debt so that we pay at a lesser cost. It's a myth.
What about for developed economies, for David, what would you say?
Well, I think all economies can choose. Governments can choose what they borrow and what they borrow for. You trap yourself. I mean, you don't have to take Chinese investment. You don't have to allow Belt and Road projects to be followed in your own country. I think this is a narrative that's put forward by the opponents of China. I think particularly the United States, who feel that China is beginning to replace them and certainly an economic importance in the world. So these terms, which are very attractive, debt trap, it's a nice little phrase, but it doesn't mean much. It's not in China's interest to trap people in debt. It's in China's interest to get a return on its investments. And the port of Piraeus is a shining example. And China's motives is not to trap other countries. It's to be more prosperous and have its trading partners more prosperous.
Whether it's a win-win-win situation for everybody. Some say, there's a different way of interpreting win-win-win. It's China wins 3 times.
Geographically, Italy is a bridge. And the bridge usually are for meet together people, culture, trade, and so on, not to divide. Italy was the traditional last arrival hub of the traditional old Belt and Road. So we couldn't miss this opportunity. And let me say last thing. Where the goods are free to go, are free to be exchanged, the soldiers will not. The army will not.
Beautifully said. When you have the free flow of trade, there will not be free flow of soldiers
armies,
and
of
armies.
soldiers.
I love that. Love
It's
that.
a very
Beautifully
interesting narrative there.
Grazie.
But I want to hear from you. I mean, Italy was the first member of the G7, to join the BRI. And of course, there was a lot of backlash, from their neighbors and of course, from other quarters. I want to hear from you. How do you see Italy, setting an example to other G7 members to join the BRI?
I don't think that we don't need to be an example because so many other European
but
countries...
But you're the first.
No, I mean, so many, to sign the MOU or the agreement as you want to call it, but so many other Western countries and European countries already have higher trade, higher investments, co-investment with China. So again, what is the matter of business is business. So.
Business is business. And of course, it has to
They
be...
do business with China even higher than Italy, so where's the matter to join it?
Pragmatism in the air. I can feel it.
As the Chinese are.
I can feel it already. Winston?
Yeah, so very quickly, I add on this win-win-win thing, right? So I want to just emphasize that relating to the digital Silk Road, right? Because the intrinsic nature of information technology and the new economy is about connecting and sharing. 2018, November 11, more than $30 billion worth of trades across the platform. Actually, what's behind it is buyers and sellers, merchandisers, vendors. More than 200 countries participated. So it's a clear example of a huge number of stakeholders, players benefited from the increased connectivity. Right?
Today, you go to Africa, you can talk to the African people about the BRI. A lot of people don't know about it. What is it? Especially private people, like private sector people. And myself, I think they are the ones who should know exactly what this initiative can bring back to them. So this is one of my hope, and I would like to just give advice to let people work a lot about, let everybody know what is this BRI initiative can bring back to our private sector.
Information is key. That's what
Is
you're
the
saying.
key.
That's what you're talking about.
Exactly.
Mr. Zhang Wei, you are the vice chair of one of the largest shipping companies in the world. This is COSCO. How can other countries look at this project and see it as a win-win platform for projects in their countries?
I totally agree with you. I think win-win is the key word. I think in the business world, there are two basic points that you must have. First, you must know that how to make money. I think that's a basic for a businessman or international businessman. And that varies from company to company, leaders to leaders. But the other point is the same. you need to know how to share the benefit.
You know, there's one thing that I always aspire to ask all of these gentlemen.
Yo.
That is, since the BRI was initiated more than 5 years ago, until today, it is still a very young initiative, only 5 years. If you think about some of the other global initiatives that have been there for decades. So all of us on a learning curve in a way. So what should we learn from the 5 years that we've been together? And what shall we aspire to achieve and involve more onto this platform to be more inclusive, as you argued?
From our point of view, I think that we learn that the relations between human beings are not only trade, economic, financial relations, but also cultural relations. Since ever, these two millennials cultures, such China and Italy, you know, the Romanian emperor and the Chinese emperors, that since this time they were not only exchanging trade, but also exchanging lifestyle, culture, state of minds, peace relations. So the so-called soft engineering power, soft contents of the Belt and Road Initiative, I think is as much important as the hard one.
Beautiful point.
Tell me, Thais, I mean, the last 5 years, you know, it has been a learning curve on how best to implement BRI projects. How then do we apply the lessons learned in the last 5 years in the next coming 5 years and going into the future?
The BRI is perhaps the next most important idea after the United Nations in 1945. The two have something in common. United Nations united the world after the war. BRI is uniting the world for development. So, and that, we need to get that. Second, we talked about the hardware and the software. I think we need to emphasize the software, the people-to-people interactions, because that's where things are happening. My colleague from Senegal talked about business community. 800 business people are invited to China, the CEOs of company. I think that's a giant step towards people-to-people in terms of bringing businesses together. In Africa and elsewhere, we are talking about corruption, governance, and all. And each country can learn from the other about how do we manage the resources that are put into the BRI.
It has already been a challenge to the Western order the last 300 years, where the West set all the standards. The West set all the paradigms, whether it was for finance, for trade, and it's called the international system. It's actually the European-American system, which has not benefited most countries sitting here in some form or another. And I think what is now occurring from Belt and Road is a counterbalance. Without colonization, without war, without conflict, there's a huge movement of money, resources, technology, and ideas around the world. So we're becoming a more balanced world without the dominance of a very few people that look more like me than you. But now we're going to a world where the integration through trade, and China's leading it, is going to create a much more stable environment.
Very well.
And what about for you, Zhang?
Yes, I have a very simple lesson that I learned in the past 5 years. I think simply to say that is, don't be afraid of blames and suspect. Just stick to your business model, stick to share. You're going to be fine. That's the lesson I learned.
Do what you are aspiring to do, as long as it is a win-win-win situation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what do you think?
I think it's the time for we African people today to open up to the world. I mean, like to access to the world. Because before we just was like access to only to European country, or few European countries. But right now with this BRI initiative, China not only gave us access to China, but gave us access to the whole world. So this is a time for us to catch up and then really work on it.
Wow.
Yeah.
If I may complete, as a matter of fact, one of the fields on which Italy and China are cooperating new on the Belt and Road is the cooperation on third countries along the Belt and Road.
That is a totally new area that we can work on for the future.
We started with energy already, with infrastructure, and ready for manufacturing together.
As we working into investments for the future economy, you know, let's say 5G networks, the future mobile devices and the digital applications, actually we are also walking to many unknown territories, right? The cyberspace that still need a new governance standards, almost like the new WTO for the cyberspace, for which China is taking lead, and together with the partners, all the more than 100 countries, right, to look into this new governance for the future.
Very good insights and, of course, expert opinion, from our panelists here. But you know what? We need to have a look at the figures because, as we say, figures do not lie. Let's have a look at what we have prepared for you on the screen.
One Silk Road economic belt, 6 corridors. One maritime Silk Road, 600 ports of calls. Under the Belt and Road Initiative, more than 240,000 jobs have been created outside China, with trade volume between China and BRI countries exceeding $6 trillion. Along the China-Europe line, only 17 freight trips were made in 2011, but that number has jumped to more than 6,000 in 2018. Compared to 7 years ago, up to 135 transport hours can now be saved on part of the railway network. Equipped with advanced technology such as temperature control, these containers are carrying more than traditional imports. During last year's World Cup, more than 100,000 crayfish were shipped to Moscow from central China. As the variety of products continue to expand, goods between China and Europe are reaching each other faster and cheaper than before.
You're watching Vision into Reality, a special program on the Belt and Road Initiative. We just learned about the numbers. Those are the realities and the facts. But besides them, we still have questions from our audience because I understand there are 40 to 50 journalists from all over the world, particularly from emerging and developing countries that are present here with us. O'Brien, I'm sure they have smarter questions than ours.
Oh, absolutely. It's now time to open the floor for questions. Who wants to go first? There you are, that
Please.
female there.
My name is Theodora Abla Amedeto Yakanu. I'm from Ghana. And my question is, how sustainable is the BRI in African countries? If a government in power signs onto the BRI and another government comes and says, I'm not interested, so what will China do?
Your question is on sustainability.
Yeah.
I think that sustainability depends from the strengthness of the project, from the vision of the project. I wanted to ask you this question because even in our democracies, the governments last for 4 or 5 years. But if a vision, if a project with a capital P is strength, then it must continue, it will continue, no matter the length of that government in that specific time.
As long as it's a good project.
As long as good.
It's a good project. Agree, Peter?
From the African perspective, I think we need to look at it a different way.
Sure.
Now, the major lesson we are learning from China as African is that sustainability and stability of governments is a key factor in kind of cumulative development to pull your people out of poverty. I think in Africa, we may have to think very hard about how to ensure sustainability and stability of our systems. And we are seeing it in countries. One country has an election today, a new president comes up and cancel all the agreements they have had with China. We've seen one country, not to mention names, in West Africa. They did that. Now, I think that needs to be thought about in terms of sustainability. And I think that's the lesson we need to learn from China. Without their stability, they would not have reached where they are. Let's be frank and open about it.
It's not just projects with China, it's project with any country.
Yes.
Very good.
Should we have more questions?
Oh, yeah, there you are. That gentleman there.
My question is concerning the situation in Afghanistan and how we are struggling to get the BRI happen in our country. The question is that, is China interested to increase its investment presence in Afghanistan, as we are hopeful that the peace quest that we are advancing is going to have a happy ending in the coming months? And what about the other countries of the BRI initiative?
During my more than 10 years of global investing career, at one time someone asked me, say, where is the largest mining investment project that you should be looking to? And I guessed many, many countries, but never thought the guy will give me the answer, Afghanistan. Who was saying there are so many mines and natural resources there, but the country is in poverty, right? So I think, for BRI to start is to really making the basic infrastructure there so that a lot of the natural resources there that can be turned into profitable and generating income for the country. Now the BRI, the basic fundamental infrastructure, will be the first step to make these projects investable so as to attract capital globally. And I'm not sure it will not be only from China capital. Actually, global mining capital will all be interested there if the basic infrastructure is in place.
The keywords there, investable and bankable projects.
Precisely.
Sophisticated questions coming from our audience and certainly well-rounded answers from our panelists sitting here today. And you're watching Vision into Reality, a special program on the Belt and Road Initiative, jointly presented to you by CGTN and KBC.
Kenya Broadcasting Corporation.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. And we'll be back after this. We had so many debates earlier on the stage and interacting with our audience. Those are important because we want to get the policies right.
Exactly, and also we want to get information out there, which of course we have heard from the guest and from the audience.
Yes,
is very critical in pushing BRI projects.
But on top of that, we want to have actions, the real actions that's going to benefit the lives of the real people.
I want you to focus on what is next to you.
Okay.
There is a table
I
here.
was
Just
looking
come
at
closer.
that. Yes, a whole table of food. Oh my God, we got so many because they're coming from the Belt and Road Initiative countries. We have dried fruit coming from Vietnam and also from Thailand as well. Over here, banana chip.
Crisps.
Yes, there we go. And also we have oranges coming from Sicily, Italy.
Yeah.
Which we talked about already. And also from Malaysia, some dried fruit as well.
Yeah.
Chocolate coming from New Zealand and Russia.
We have tea and coffee from Kenya, and you've never tasted tea or coffee if you've never tasted Kenyan tea and coffee. Right, and definitely guess what's coming up next? I know this is your favorite part, when we have wine, Chilean and Italian wine. I know
Beautiful
this is your
wine
favorite
over there.
part. Eh?
Can't wait to raise our glass
Yes.
of wine and have a taste of it.
Very good.
Cheers.
Cheers and good health.
And with that, we're coming to the end of today's special program, Vision into Reality, a special program on Belt and Road Initiative. I'm Tian Wei from CGTN.
And my name is O'Brien Kimani. Thank you so very much indeed for joining us here in Beijing.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you. Cheers. Good health. Good health.